check.
I can hear you.
Check, check to the one check.
Yeah. You look good, man. You got
Mike, we meet, man.
it has to be this way, I'm afraid, but yes, we did.
This is great, man. This is great. Hey, is that some of that light too bright?
No, it looks great. You look very holy. There's an aura about you.
I'm from the South, man. I'm not holy.
You got those gospel chops. What are you talking about?
Yeah, man.
So, this
Um,
isn't this isn't actually live because I just did an interview. I don't like to call it an interview. It's more just a talk or whatever, but
yeah.
and it turned out really well, but I love the idea of putting it into Final Cut later and adding graphics. Like if you talk about your band or something, I could put like a quick picture or like a video clip or something like that.
Okay.
Are you cool with
That's
that?
cool. Man, I'm just happy to be here. So whatever you need to do to make your life easier.
Okay. Well, there's
Yeah.
also that pressure. Like the pressure can be good. It's kind of like going live on stage where, hey, whatever happens is just going to be out there now. So sometimes that's cool with live streams, but I kind of like, I don't know, I'm sort of a control freak, I think, and sometimes I like to look things over afterwards and maybe seamlessly put things together, because you know how there's that weird delay between us a little bit, like there'll be like a one
Yeah.
second delay. I don't like how that throws off the groove, so sometimes I'll chop those out a little bit.
Okay. Cool. Well, here's your mad production skills, dude.
Yeah, I try, man. I saw you were on a live stream like 2 days ago, huh?
Yeah, we did mostly Minnesota music. And I only heard of it just through Instagram,
Hmm.
but I think Ann and Heather, who, and you should just hang out with them too and do one of their deals. They started McAllister on the radio station.
Oh, wow.
So they have a radio, blog, podcast, Instagram account. So it's cool. I just, that stuff doesn't exist a lot anymore around here, you know,
Hmm.
versus all the print days, which weren't too long ago. And with like city pages, and it's like, I commend anybody who has the courage and the drive and the energy to support local artists and really help people connect. So cool.
It's tough because I've noticed like when the city pages folded, and it was kind of one of those things where it was like, this is really it. This is the last city pages. So I had to go get one. I went to Barnes and Noble and I looked around. There's none of them laying around. So I think there's still like people
Oh,
still like cherish city pages, but I just don't think while
yeah,
it was around, it was able to do what it used to do, just because, I mean, no live events going on. And sometimes I wonder
right.
about the dedication to local music sometimes, because people who seem to be so into it, sometimes they just sort of fall off kind of quickly. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like last year you were the biggest fan and now you're never going to shows and stuff. So I don't know. Do you
Right.
find it kind of fickle, or is it just me?
Um, well, I think, ultimately, whether we like it or not, we follow family life as musicians and educators and entertainers. And we follow, whether we're listening in pop culture because of the family unit, we really kind of flow with, the invention of streaming and staying at home and really being super comfortable and in control of everything. But I think, through our experience right now, as you and I are experiencing, making the most of our online um, channel, our TV channels, our cable access. I always say I'm just starting a cable access TV channel, and
Basically.
you know, right? Like, it reminds me as a kid with SCTV in Canada, and
God, you remember
just like,
SCTV?
oh yeah, I've just been looking at that stuff on YouTube lately, just because it's so still good.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
just think of, like, it's Wayne's World, man. We're just right. We're just in the basement having fun and doing our best. And but I know what you mean. It's like there's in where we are in the Twin Cities, from about, well, pre-COVID May to September. There's too much to do.
Hmm.
So it's almost like there's too much stimulation on outdoor events and stuff like that. But I don't know. I
It's
don't know.
nice. It's nice to have the scene. Back when I was playing with Mark Mallman all the time, it was like
Yeah.
The crowds would vary, but there were always people going to Art World. There was always people kind of interested. But you're right. I think when people follow kind of what's not most comfortable, but like the family thing you're talking about, it really seemed like it kind of went in waves. And I thought, okay, when's that next big wave going to come? And then right when I
Right.
thought it was going to start up, like the COVID thing happened, and I'm like, okay, this is probably going to be on hold for a while. But who knows? Maybe once all this kind of boils over, hopefully, people will be hungry for it
Yeah.
again. Like I was able
Sure.
to, like restaurants opening yesterday or Monday, and it was like, they were packed. It was just like, okay, people want to get out. They want to do stuff. They're just still
Right.
really cautious, obviously. But
Right. How many years did you play with Mallman? Because that's how I remember knowing about you just through the online experience of your footage of you and Mallman. So how long did you play with Mark?
I think it was like 12 years altogether.
I used to live in Uptown, which is a little neighborhood for in the Twin Cities here for those who are out of town. Um, it's our former hipster neighborhood, which is now pretty much abandoned.
Yeah.
Um, but I used to go to the Y on Blaisdell, and there's Mallman every day, man. And we just nod, hey, Mark. And we chat occasionally, but he was, I don't know if he's still going there. I moved, so I'm not going to the Y
Hmm.
at that location. But I was impressed. That dude was dedicated, man.
Oh
He
yeah.
was, he was like intent on being fit. I really admired him. He was there way more than I was, that's for sure.
He
So,
went through like a phase where he had some crazy things happen in his life, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, he's like, "Hey, Mike, check out these biceps." I'm like, "When did that happen?" Because all of a sudden he looked ripped. He looked like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. I was like, "Okay,
oh, and
I got to get used to the new Mark Mallman, who's going to be all cut and scary looking and
right.
stuff in a good way." And I think what with Mark, just like a lot of really intense artists that I know, once they get
Hmm.
like settled in something, they do it like 300%. And I do that too, to a fault. Like even these live streams, like I went from doing nothing live to all of a sudden like bam, bam, bam. And I realized I was coming home every night at
Yeah,
4 in the morning. And it's just like, it can be a bad habit sometimes to get that deep into
right.
something.
Yeah, I'm not saying this just because you invited me on, but I've always wanted to say this in person. It's like, I think we all commend you for your ability to take care of your music needs and artistic needs and find that courage and that discipline and that energy to really, because we're all trying to survive and all trying to make a living and all trying to give back at the same time. So it's
Hmm.
like all artists and specifically musicians, we have so many things going on. And really, the brain can only do so much during the day. So it's like, not to pull a Dr. Oz on everybody, um, but it's like really streamlining what you really need to do and have to do for your music self, where you can survive. And I think what you're doing is amazing because I know you've made some really important decisions in the last few years on things that you aren't doing anymore and refocusing your energy on what you're doing now. It feels just from afar really smart and right and streamlined, and it's very inspiring for a lot of us just to see people taking risks like that. So
I think
yeah,
it's
following that heart.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder though if my introverted nature makes most of the calls for me, and I'm like, is that good or is that kind of detrimental? Because I really find myself like blocking myself out. Even before COVID, I was like, I quit my Heart tribute band because I'm just like
I remember that. Yeah, that
every
post.
weekend playing. It just seems like too much stimulation, and I honestly felt like I was going a little bit crazy. And so when I started being very
Mm,
isolated, doing live streams, I was like, I wonder what musicians like yourself who would play a lot, all the time, feel now that you really can't do that for a while. I don't know. How did you cope with that? Or how are you coping with that?
um, you know, um, I still feel, for me personally, like I'd like to do more performing just because I was out of it um, during for about 2009. I mean, it's a whole nother funny. It's funny now. It wasn't at the time, but I went through a lawsuit with a business partner
Mm,
for a music education company,
really?
and yeah, he was a total freak. Um, but so that experience was like 3 years of my life, and then I kind of had to go away for some health issues. So I lost about 6 years. So the way I look at it is like I'm jonesing for more performance just because I was out of it for an extended period of time. So I really missed it. So
Wow, 6 years.
yeah, I mean, I was the 3 years during the lawsuit, I was still, but when you're going through an intense business disagreement, and it ends up kind of being a big deal, that's your life. And so that was on and off, and it was, I can look back on it and, not chuckle,
Yeah.
but,
You
but
have to.
that I'm through it,
Yeah.
and, and understand people like that exist. But anyway, so yeah, the live streaming, I've been making the most of it with just some collaborations with people I'd never been in a group with, or um, just through the whole Instagram experience as well, and just people around Minnesota that just kind of popped up. You want to try a song, or you just want to try filming something like we're doing here.
Hmm.
So it's been really rewarding. It's cool. We're making the most of it.
Yeah, for sure. And you're doing lessons on YouTube as well and starting that. I mean, how long has your channel been around?
I didn't, COVID really, I've had this book called The Rock and Roll Diet that I wrote in throughout the 2000s. I would travel to my hometown of Cincinnati, Ohio, and take either take a plane or just drive and stay overnight somewhere. And so I wrote it literally just traveling back and forth through Ohio. And so I have all these chapters, and I have always wanted, before I leave the earth, I was like, man, I'd just like to have each chapter as a video. So it's a very sort of finite series.
Limited series.
And yeah, and then I'm sure something will evolve from that. But it's very innocent. I haven't really thought seriously about it. And, with COVID, it's just, you got the downtime. So it's like, it's funny. I don't know how you feel about this, but it's like, watching you perform live back in the day, and then watching you online. It's like, I think I don't want to speak for you, but I think we're
Go ahead.
both very comfortable at performing and very good at it. I just mean that because we put the time into it.
Sure, sure.
Um, but my shyness is basically being on camera, like, alone. So that's why I commend you too. I think you have a knack for your channel, and being inviting and honest and pure. So it's a good way to work out. Like, I'm fearless there, but you stick a camera in front of me, and I'm like, wow, I'm 5 years old. This is weird. Um,
You're like
so
reading a report in the classroom when everyone's looking at you. It's that feeling again.
totally, man.
Yeah.
So I look at code and like live streaming, and doing my little rock and roll diet series, whatever that will be. I don't know. Um, it's just what a great higher life lesson on like eliminating some shyness from, because you don't want to hold back, because you want to help people, and give some creative ideas and just express yourself. So it's been a really great lesson on, like, I'm chipping away at that like 5-year-old dude, you know. So
Well, I noticed that when I first started to live stream, I go back and watch my early ones, which is funny. It's only been about a month, but I was I would think of something to say because it's all stream of consciousness. Like we're talking, I've got maybe 100 people watching, and someone will drop in like, "Hey, do you like Dawkins?" And then a bunch of stories will come up in my head, and I used to hold back a little bit,
right.
but then after about a month went by, I started to relax, and people were like, "I think Mike's going a little insane." But I'm like, "No, I'm not going crazy. I
No,
did that years ago."
you're you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
becoming more of what I really am. It's kind of like a relationship when you
Yeah.
first have a couple dates and everything's perfect, and then later
Yeah.
someone's just like, "Oh, okay, this is a real life kind of sinking in." And I feel like the more you're real to yourself, especially when you're live and doing it for real, you can't edit anything or whatever, the more people
Right.
feel relaxed. I mean, people keep saying, "Man, you seem very relatable," and I'm like, maybe that's because I'm not afraid to show weakness or something, but I just kind of let it all out
Right.
there. It seems like you would do that too.
Right. Yeah. I think it's important, even um, just to live by that honesty, because it's like people sometimes misrepresent that, and it's like, no, you can still be a confident artist and really love what you do, and be human, and have flaws and these deep insecurities that you want to work on. And
Mhm.
I appreciate the honesty in any artist, like keeping it real, and nobody's, superhuman. So
It could be tough though. Like it's for example, if you don't know something or you make a mistake, and yet you're a teacher or something, it's really hard to show that weakness at first. But I learned that lesson
right.
early when I made a mistake doing a Metallica riff, and then I had to
I
come.
saw their post today. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I had to do like I had to come back and say, "Oh, I screwed this up." And then surprisingly, a lot of people said, "Hey, that's why I subscribed to your channel because you're one of the first YouTube guitar players that admitted they made a mistake." And I'm like, "That's all
Right,
I got to do?" Okay, I've got a lot of those mistakes then. But
right,
I think
right.
I think people feel comfortable. It's kind of like when someone meets you for the first time and then you say something just silly and yeah, kind of goofy or whatever, then they relax and they can be themselves. I think that's a huge part of connecting with people online.
So I had a question off the grid here.
Yeah.
So you did a reunion of your old metal band?
Yeah, a couple
Right.
times.
That was cool. So I know Chris. So he was your drummer.
Yep, Chris Blood.
So I never knew that because I worked with him back in the day at the Green Belt Studio Highway, the Hideaway with Joe Mabbitt way
Oh
back
yeah.
in the day.
Yep.
I remember Chris hanging out there. So yeah,
You
he's a
were
really great guy.
Yeah, he actually, it was funny because he and I have been friends since about 14 years old, and he got into recording, and then later in our 20s, he ended up renting a space in that building with John Heinen. I'm sure you know John
Yeah,
Heinen.
yeah, 440, right?
A440, yeah. And then
Yeah,
they moved out and Chris took over, which is crazy because Chris always wanted that space and everything and it just worked out. And then Joe shows
right.
up and then it's A440 slash Sonic Edge slash The Hideaway. It had all these names, you know. And now I think it's
Yeah,
mostly The Hideaway doing most of the stuff. And then Chris still goes in sometimes and does sessions still. So it's still a thing
cool.
going on there. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so when I first moved to town, uh, I got a job, and Joe Mabbitt is a great engineer in town, and he does most of he does Atmosphere, the hip hop Atmosphere, and their sort of umbrella of groups is his
Hmm.
recording projects. And he's a great guy. But when I first moved to Minneapolis, that was my first job. I ran a jingle studio called Trail Mix, and Joe was the engineer, and Joe was probably, I think, 19,
I didn't know you were part of Trail
20.
Mix. That's crazy. I used to hear that all the time. Trail Mix.
Yeah, yeah. So Joe went to, I think, a recording school in Arizona out west,
I'm not sure.
and came back as a young man. And I kind of just tried to get sales and get gigs for us, and then do concierge work when clients were in town. But that was my first jingle advertising job, which I will never do again.
I don't blame you.
Um, no offense to anybody that's doing it, just wasn't my thing.
It's tough.
But yeah, it's tough. But Joe and I he's a really funny guy. We had great times. But Chris would come in and out. And he was always such a good dude. So
Yeah, he's
I'm glad
solid.
he's still
He's
doing his thing.
he's running Sound Live, but that's hard to do these days, obviously. But still running his studio, and then he's working at IPR for recording and all
Okay.
that. So when McNally Smith kind of got pulled out, the rug got pulled out from underneath that. He
Yeah.
transitioned nicely into the next stage. But what I remember about Joe Mabbitt is he's always been like a pro, and I mean, he's a great drummer. A lot of people don't know that he plays drums, and he's just
Yeah,
overall
man.
like one of those guys that everything he does seems to work out for some reason. He's just
Yeah.
one of those dudes.
Joe, back in the day, it was late 90s when I moved to town.
Hmm.
And Joe is known as like the Pro Tools whiz. Like he was the young kid that,
Knew all the key
and
commands and
so
everything.
he totally took it over because he hit at the right time with Avid and Pro Tools kind of starting their game at that time. And Joe really took advantage of that, and he was really quick. And that's what he was known for back in the day, was Pro Tools guy.
Really?
Um, yeah, and he engineered my first record called Tugboat, which is offline. I worked with him, and we recorded a whole record with two 57s, two SM57s, and it was great, man. But so yeah, he's a dad now, two kids, lives in St. Paul, runs the highway, still is a great engineer, and
Oh yeah.
still doing a lot of hip hop records.
Yeah, it's funny because back when I was really young, I didn't realize how big Atmosphere was, which is silly being from Minneapolis. But somebody's like, "Yeah, who records at the studio?" I'm like, some groups like I don't know, Brother Ali, Atmosphere. They're like, "What? Holy crap!" And then guys like
Totally, dude.
yeah, like guys like Idea were coming in, and I didn't know who they were. I was just like this little
Right.
metalhead kid, and then I had one conversation with Idea, Mike. I don't know if people know him, but it's one of those things where it's like people in Minneapolis really know Idea and abilities and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And I
Right.
remember
Right.
he walked in, and I was in the little MIDI room on the side, and he started like trying to talk to me, but everything he said was like poetry, and he started talking about the curtains and stuff, and I'm like, okay, this guy's on a whole nother level here. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, if you guys don't know about Idea and abilities, I love watching his old rap battles. I don't know if you've ever seen those before.
Oh, absolutely.
They're
Didn't he do
crazy.
an HBO one?
Yeah,
Is
he
that his
was.
big claim to
Well,
fame?
yeah, what was that
That,
called? He actually won, and he beat some really big name rappers, and I'm like, holy crap,
yeah,
man, that's so sweet.
yeah.
But
He was a cool dude. He was a savant. Like it was cool in his later when he started like learning piano and guitar and started doing rock records, and I thought that was pretty a cool move.
I got
You
to hear
know?
some of that stuff because I know he was working with, Jeremy Elvissaker and doing
Yeah,
doing a lot of stuff, Guitar Party and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, this guy
yeah,
is very diverse. He's known for one thing,
yeah.
yet he can play on stage, play guitar, and just stand in the background sometimes if he wants to as well.
Right.
It's very cool.
That's the other thing moving here. So I lived, was born in Cincinnati, and I moved to Los Angeles for 5 years and did some session work and some band stuff. Moved here with some Minnesota people, but really was a tech out there. Did a
Mm.
lot of roadie work and just front work, and got hooked up with a bunch of sound stages and stuff like that. Um, but coming back here, I was blown away like how many killer unique guitar players are in Minneapolis and St. Paul Twin Cities area, even Duluth with like Alan Sparhawk. And
Mm.
um, first it was very, very intimidating and very, very scary. Um, because being out west, I kind of, it was the '90s thing, so
Mm.
it was post Nirvana and all that kind of stuff. But it was like the anti-guitar solo years.
Yeah.
Um, and then coming here, it's like, oh wow, everybody was good, but everybody had their own voice and everybody's really creative and kind of had it all: good writing, good performance, good technique, and good feel. But that's the reason I've stayed a long time, is like going to other places and playing in other cities and traveling and all that stuff a little bit. And pound for pound, the Midwest, it's like, I don't know. I lived in Chicago for 3 months and played there 20 times. It's like, I don't know. Minneapolis is just like, it just kicked your butt, man, in a good way. It
Mm.
keeps you, if you want to, if you still have that desire to maintain your craft, and you don't have to, right? So it's not forced. You know what I mean? You want to feel forced. You want to be. It's natural motivation to want to just stay on your game because it's fulfilling and it helps people, and it's really just good for you, and it's who you are.
Well, speaking
So
of
yeah,
unique players, like you played a few of the Mallman marathons, haven't you?
I did one,
Okay.
and
Was it was it part
that was.
three, the one that went 3 days or whatever?
I just remember I was at the turf club,
Yeah.
and I didn't know Mark, and he emailed me, and he's just, hey man, I want to come up, and it was like awesome. It was like free jazz rock and roll. It was fabulous. And I just remember being really, really sweaty,
Hmm.
and then really perplexed how he's going to do that. And he did it, and being super overwhelmed and impressed that a man can stay up for 3 days and play music.
Especially when you would like put the night cam on him. So at night I'd wake up at like 5 in the morning and I'd turn it on and he's still on stage like trying to play, and I'm just like, oh my god, how's he gonna get through
Well,
this?
you know him. Like, how do you train for? That's like going to the moon, man. That's like
Yeah.
NASA stuff, man.
If if
Like,
you
how did?
if you told Mark he needed to run a marathon tomorrow, he probably would just do it. He has this weird fifth gear where he just,
Wow,
no matter what, like
crazy.
there's some, you know how like when you're younger and you've got like certain chemicals inside that just drive you and make you follow through on things. He always seems to have that. So it's like, yeah,
Mm,
he's one of those guys that I don't know, he doesn't need a gun to his head. He has like an inner motivation to do these kind of crazy things, and whether it's just to see if he can do it or whether it's for promotional, like it's like a wow factor type thing. I think all that
sure,
factors in and he just drives through it. I'm sure he slept for 6 days afterwards or whatever, but
sure.
he did it. I don't know. I remember him talking about you at the marathon because
Mm,
we were coming up for the finale, and that was going to be a cool thing because we were just going to jam through the end, and then he was going to take his lyric book because he had this huge phone book size thing full of lyrics that he was reading
yeah.
out of, and he tore them out and like chewed on them and threw it in the audience and stuff like that. And he was talking about you, and he's like, yeah, and then Mike came up, and of course he was awesome, and then he just kept talking about how creatively in the moment everything just clicked, and you're really good at creating parts versus just jamming, you know what I mean? So I'm like, yeah, he's one of those creative guys. And
Oh,
so when you
that's sweet of him. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, but
Thanks.
when you say you came here and saw that everybody had their own voice, I
Yeah.
see that too, but you having your own voice must have been kind of cool because, or did you develop it because you felt you needed to cultivate maybe a different way of playing? Because your way of playing is very unique. I want to kind of show a video in, I'll do it in post
Oh,
production
okay.
where I'll slip it in. Is that
Cool.
cool? You must be like a drummer too, because you have a very percussive way of playing.
I made a conscious decision as a teen, and I think we're similar in age, right?
45.
So I, I'm a little bit older than you. I'm a 5'0". So
Nice.
growing up in, I think growing up in an era where there were just lot of groups that were just like musician bands. So it's like you had hard rock and you had metal, but you also had pop bands that were amazing, like the Police, that really knew, that were great musicians. Growing up with Led Zeppelin, they're all session dudes.
Yeah.
And so the musicianship factor is really, I felt I was really lucky being a kid in the 80s, and learning my craft at that era. And I made a conscious decision, it's like, for whatever reason, that, man, well, if I like that person, I like that person. I like Eddie Van Halen, I like Andy Summers, I like Vernon
Hmm.
Reid, I like The Edge. I'm going down, I like Angus Young, I'm like, okay, I like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like, what do they all have in common? It's like, oh, they're who they are. And they all play A chords and A minor chords and all nine chords and all that stuff. But why they sound different? Oh, they made a conscious choice to say, I'm going to be Mike. And so I remember being a teen and go, man, I think I just have to have the balls to just stick this out and just try that. Again, being a really shy kid, and my family, like, we're not Italian, but we could be like an East Coast Italian family
Hmm.
where everybody's has an opinion. Everybody's it's a very cool person, of course, but there's a lot of alpha, you know. And so I was like more of a quiet, shy, quiet dude. But music, thank God, was like the guitar specifically was the only, honest to God, and that's probably a story for millions of us, but my God, this is the only thing that I get to totally be me, where I feel I have the courage and the risk taking energy to do that. So I thought it was a conscious effort as a kid, and just stuck with it. And you get a lot of shit for it, and um, but
You mean
whatever, man.
because people were like mainly shredders, and then you get crap because maybe you were more like a Tom Morello type shredder with originality.
I was more in that line, and then starting out, I really focused out on chord voicings, and I really loved Halen, but I wasn't doing traditional tapping. I was doing chordal tapping and Michael Hedges and all that kind of stuff. Um, so it was, but it was funny. It's like I didn't develop my soloing aptitude until I was 23. So I have the formative years of focusing on chord voicings and different techniques. I like flamenco and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff and effects and I didn't get really serious about melodic soloing and phrasing and sense of swing and timing until my early 20s. So I got a lot of shit when I was a teenager for not shredding. Um,
Wow.
yeah, whatever. Um, but I'm glad, I took some time to develop that because I like doing both now. So
Yeah, it's like you have a pyramid of skill because I took the complete opposite path to finally eventually get to where I am now where I feel comfortable both ways. But I started off really worshiping the shredder side of things, and I remember loving, Paul Gilbert and Kirk Hammett and just really the guys who just made a lot of noises at the time.
I love Paul Gilbert.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a great writer too. Great writer.
He is, and he's come full circle too. Like I think he went really bluesy for a while after his shred years, and now he just puts it all together in a really unique way. But I got to the point where I'm like, I feel kind of hollow, because I play all these fast things, but I don't feel like I'm saying what I want to say. And really, it wasn't until around the Mark Mallman period, which was really late in life, where I really felt like Mark kind of gave me the freedom to really try to express myself, even though I felt like I held back a lot. Just as a guitar player, you always want to walk the balance, I guess not always, but sometimes between what you really want to say and what you want people to think of you as. I don't know if that makes any sense because I went my whole life being considered this fast shredder guy, and then one time I went up
which is a great, admirable, killer skill.
It can be. I'm glad I did it first, at least for a while, because I feel like I put in the hours. So now whenever I have to play something that's fast, it's not that hard to learn.
Right.
But one day I was about to play a solo and Mark just came up. Remember, this was in Marquette, Michigan. And he took his mic stand and just started like sliding it on my strings, And ever since that day, it's like he unlocked something in me, and I'm like, oh, okay, because it sounded really cool, I'm like, okay, I just got to stick up my ass right now, and I gotta relax and just express and not worry so much about being so technically whatever, And I think that's kind of a big hurdle for a lot of people.
So you had you with Mark's help, you started these new angles of your playing of just letting go a little bit, right?
Yeah, because I think I had
Jump off the cliff with him, yeah.
Yeah, because he's gonna pull you down no matter what down the cliff, and that's not a bad thing. That's like a freedom dive, And it got to the point where I was kind of overthinking everything I was doing, and then one day after he did that, I just realized, what do I really like to do on the guitar? And that's when I started implementing my love of like synthesizer, monosynth type thing, and I'm like, I kind of want to play guitar like that. And that's when my next evolution of guitar leads came, because I wasn't worried about speed. I was more worried about that angle of it instead. A lot more fun.
Right. So you got to do some of that with Mallman, the melodic synth influenced guitar.
Yeah, like notes being held out, singing, parts versus just licks, and it just got to the point where I'm like, my guitar, I finally feel like my guitar is singing versus me forcing it to do something that it doesn't want to do.
Right. That's cool. Yeah. I love the evolution that we're still able to evolve and see the growth and kind of continue to, I always look at it as just like a slow ascension. I'm in no rush, but I always want to evolve every year. I want to look back and go, what happens? Like, oh man, your sense of swing is like better. So what I like to do at home, and I'm not in a blues band, but like even as a teen, when I'm doing like more alt rock guitar, it's like I always listen to Albert Collins, Albert King, Stevie Ray Vaughan, the whole Alligator Records crew. Lon Mack lived in Indiana, where I was from down there, so he was kind of a part of the thing. And so all I do now at home is like, well, what do you practice? Well, I either write tunes or I just play blues. Like that's because I still feel all these decades later that I listened to that and I went to all those shows as a teenager, but I wasn't implementing my love for that. And the only thing I got at that time I was really influenced by, James Brown, because he did all the records in Cincinnati in the early days. And then the whole, it's sort of the John Mayer effect for kids in the early 2000s. Stevie Ray Vaughan was the guy who reached the white kids in the suburbs
Right.
and said, by the way, everybody on tour, here's Johnny Copeland and here's all my Austin buddies. He introduced a 13-year-old to like all these African American blues musicians and but that's where I got that sense of rhythm. He was the first guy to go, oh man, I know he got a lot of it from Hendrix too, but
Hmm.
that flowing funky rhythm, man, he was just so great at it. And um so that's what I got out of it then.
Yeah.
But now, umpteen years later, it's like I'll just play Chicago blues at home and just be like, just have,
Oh yeah.
ah.
Perma smile.
I just love it, man. Yeah, it's meditative for me. So
I think
that's what I've been doing at home.
it, it's a good thing to do. It's a good way to pass the time. I
Yeah.
just think we all
Yeah.
have, I don't know if it's, where it comes from exactly, but it feels like we all have our favorite grooves and our favorite feels. And it's like, if I'm sitting around and I listen to the feel, or if I'm driving, I just feel connected to the world in a different way. And when I'm on stage, it's like when I finally developed, like my guy was Stevie Ray Vaughan to be able to play shuffles and swings and everything. And I remember
Yeah.
playing Life by the Drop for my friend, and it was actually for Chris Blood. And Chris is like, sounds pretty good. And then I played him the original. And he's like, oh my God. And he was like moving his head. And I'm like, I'm not making anyone's head move yet. And I thought, that's my goal. If I can play and I see people
Right.
feeling it, then I know I did it. It took probably a decade
Yeah.
later before I realized my inner shuffle, my inner swing. But I mean, to get to that point, I literally joined a country band and played drums because I wanted to practice shuffle beats. And I just
Yeah,
took,
dude, you can like slam on drums, man. When did you
yeah.
start that?
I actually started when I was about 8 years old. My dad just said, hey,
Wow.
have you ever heard the song Wipeout? I'm like, I think so. And then he took his fingers and just started drumming on the desk. And I'm like, that's really cool. So ever since he taught me how to play Wipeout with my hands, I've always had
Yeah,
a sense of rhythm. And I'm like, I wonder if it was something that simple that can
that's
implant
innate.
implant the seed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's innate, man. It's hard to teach. It's hard to teach, somebody who's starting their game, maybe, midlife,
Hmm.
some intense rhythm. And it's nice to have a drummer's help. I always kind of send them to drum teachers, just exactly what you're talking about, to get the spark of rhythm from an actual drummer versus a guitar player.
Yeah.
So that was your first instrument, was drums?
Yeah. And then I, took up
Wow,
violin in sixth grade. And then after that, it
dude.
was weird because my brother basically bought a guitar and an amp. It was this huge PVPA speaker amp. And
God bless those.
yeah, I wish I still had it. And he basically would leave the guitar sitting there. I'm like, hey, that looks cool. And so I just mess around. I just would like mess around. And then I got into hearing some riffs in my head. And I'm like, I wonder if I could just figure that out on the guitar. And next thing I knew, my brother was like yelling at me because he's like, quit playing my guitar. I'm like, I'll just buy it from you. And I was about 12 years old. Ever since then, I just haven't stopped.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
So, if I may,
sure.
so music family.
Really, no. I mean, everybody in my family just kind of was like, why is Michael in his bedroom for 10 hours a day, just playing guitar? And they couldn't really understand it. My sister, she was not popular, but she was always out with her friends. My brother kind of got in a little bit of trouble when he was younger, so he was always out.
Mm,
And my dad really is the only one. He would like sing in the shower all the time. And I guess when I was like 5 years old, my parents
that's
had a record player in the living room and they would play old CCR
okay.
albums and stuff. So I think that's where the seed was planted as far as just liking music and feeling music a certain way.
So dad was into it. Sounds like he was a listener, like he was a fan.
He was a big fan and he had a sense of rhythm and he had a lot of things that he never was able to express other than to sing along with songs or sing in the shower. But I don't know.
Right,
How about
right.
your family?
You know, my mom went to. My grandmother played in the silent films as a piano player, and then my mom went to the University of Illinois back in the '50s for voice. Um, but I was the oops baby. I think they say I wasn't, but so I was like 10 years behind the pack.
Hmm.
So they were like in their 20s. Rock and roll came out. So they were married in 25 in 1957. So they were more of the big band, swing dancing, Broadway, Gershwin, all that kind of stuff. So there was always music at the house. My mom was in a singing group in Ohio, where I'm from, and my dad piano lessons. He's a more visual artist guy, great visual artist and woodworker, and kind of do everything. Um, and so they nurtured. They're like, hey, you're gonna play piano first, but you play guitar, and it's just like, no, that thing, the piano before guitar thing. Oh man, what?
Had to
Oh
do it.
no! But I did it for 3 years, man.
Okay.
And whether you believe in reincarnation or not, piano was really easy for me. And I just remember never practicing and just doing those little songs out of the book.
Really?
And
You just
just
picked it up easily, huh?
it was really easy. And I was like, later in life, I'm like, I don't want to go to the reincarnation thing on our music experience here. But just as a joke, I was like, I wonder, that's why I didn't stick with piano, because it feels like I already did it. Like, it wasn't. It was like, this is easy. And I don't mean to sound cocky either, but it
No,
was just
no, I
like,
get
oh,
what
this
you're
is
saying.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I was like, oh, that was easy. But it wasn't, I was a rocker. So it's like, but I do remember at my piano lessons, her name was Mrs. West, and she had this collie, a dog, a huge collie dog.
Hmm.
What's his name? And I rang the doorbell, and she was always in with another lesson. She was, well, go wait down there, go wait in the other room. And the dog would corner me every time. And
Oh,
I told my
geez.
mom, I go, this dog hates me, it's scaring me, it backs me in the corner.
Oh man.
So that was another reason to get the hell out of piano lessons, man, because I think his name was Sam.
He was trying to warn you or something.
Damn Sam.
Those collies are intimidating. Chris Blood had two of them, and they have really long noses, and they just when they poke into you, it's
Right.
like a weapon.
Yeah, man. So I did my 3 years, man, and I got out of piano and took guitar for about 2 years. I did it 2 years with a cool guy named Keith Bowers. He's out in Seattle now. So um, that's the family kind of experiences. There was music in the house. I was the rocker. My sisters were all kind of R&B, like early Michael Jackson. I remember Prince
Hmm.
in the house, Commodores, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and your prerequisite 70s classic rock, your
Oh yeah.
Styx, your Journey, all that stuff.
You're
So
Boston. What's funny is
yeah,
even if your family wasn't very musical, like when I grew up, some of my friends' families weren't musical. They still had Michael Jackson and Prince playing. So I think that gave a whole generation sort of a head start in the feel of music. Whereas today, I know some
I
people that
agree.
never have music in the house. All they have is background music, very quiet, maybe on an iPad somewhere, or they have the TV always playing. So it's like they grew up on commercials. They grew up on, they don't grow up feeling that beat like we did. And I wonder if that's going to affect a whole generation now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel really blessed. So since we're talking music and guitar, which is fabulous, the real so things are being triggered. So if I'm
Hmm.
talking too much, I
No,
just came
no, I
off
know
of
the
six
feeling.
hours of teaching, 6 hours of teaching, so I'm super chatty.
Sure.
Um, it was my cousin, man. So my family were super cool. They supported me with the lessons. I'm sure at times they're like, what is this music? Like,
Hmm.
what is this dude doing? What's this alt rock stuff? What's this alt rock? Um, but I had a bunch of older cousins that were just rockers, man. So I would go to the Quad Cities. I'd go to Rock Island, Illinois during the summer, every summer, and I'd walk up my cousin's house and I'd open his room, and there's a Rush All the World's a Stage poster, and there's a bong, and there's just like guitars and drums. And so I had that side of the family, which is my dad's, and then my mom's side of the family, I had two savant cousins who were like, it sounds like you kind of came out of the womb at 5, were great drummers and boogie woogie piano players when they're like 4th grade,
Jeez.
just shredding when they were just young. And
Reincarnation.
those guys influenced me. I have a cousin, Timmy McHale, who introduced me to Van Halen.
Mm.
And that was a trip out west. So I think between 6 cousins that were really gung-ho on music, I have to say that was my main spark for wanting to do it for the rest of my life. I have to owe it to those guys. Obviously, I thank my family for still supporting me and being a musical family and artistic family, which I'm very fortunate to be in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rocker cousins who just like, just, yeah. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do.
Yep, you've been
Rock and
branded.
roll.
You have to do it. It's something about cousins. I don't know what it is. My cousin Jamie did the same thing, and he lived down in the Quad Cities for a while as well. And I guess that's just a
cool.
crazy place. But he was more in like a crazy punk band, and he brought over Kiss Alive when I was very young. I was like 8 years old.
Fabulous.
And he brings that over, and I just remember looking at the cover so much. I was just like, this looks very, very cool, like a comic book. And then he played the first track. It was Deuce, and you hear the crowd. And I think my DNA was changing at that very moment. Like I was becoming, just changed forever. And I don't know, listening to Kiss Alive over and over and over again as a kid, drawing pictures of Kiss when you're supposed to be in school doing stuff, jumping off the couch pretending you're like playing a guitar. I think all that stuff just set the table for like the inevitable. It's really weird that we both had like cool cousins that got us into things.
Cool cousins. So speaking of Kiss, I've not heard. I want to hear more of this. So whatever you think about Gene Simmons as a person, a character, or whatever, his bass lines are great.
Yeah.
He writes killer bass lines, man.
He does.
Like I always remember that as a teen going, I was like, I just remember looping that.
Detroit Rock City?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
But he's got, I remember watching the Gene Simmons show. Wasn't that on like 10 years ago?
Yeah, I remember that.
He had like a reality show. And I just watched him at home just, yeah. Oh my gosh, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, man. But I just remember him picking up a guitar, and I'm like, well, I know he's a musician, and I know he's like a business guy. Like they're parallel. Mm-hmm. Listen to Kiss records, man. Growing up, it was like I always listened to the bass. I always thought he wrote really cool bass lines, and I loved his tone, and I'm glad it was loud in the mix.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought he felt really good, too. I thought that was cool. And singing and doing, I don't know. It's a good bass, good walking blues lines, too, It's great.
He's one of those guys that people overlook because obviously all the pageantry and everything, but he, his songs were never my favorite songs on Kiss albums. There were maybe one or two that I really love by Gene, but most of my favorite songs were Paul tunes and then, the occasional Ace tune or whatever. But it got to the point where I had to realize too that the bass lines were underappreciated by a lot of people because I started to do like breakdowns of their music. And I started realizing that these Ace Frehley solos that I thought were going to be easy were actually pretty tough. And then I'm like, okay, what about the bass lines? And actually was on the phone. This is weird. Talk about how strange life is right now. About 2 weeks ago, I called up Bruce Kulick because I did a video on his techniques. And he's like, hey, dude, we should do like a live stream sometime. And he was talking about how he's doing this Kiss reunion thing on a cruise ship soon or something like that. And that he had to recreate Gene's bass lines. And he said exactly what you said. He's just like, you ever notice how important they are? Like the song Sure Know Something. It's like if it's not there, it's not the same at all. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like I think Gene is one of those guys that his ego maybe outshines his talent to a lot of people. And I guess that's just the way it goes, but it is kind of sad.
It's cool that you got to hang out with Bruce and rap.
Just for a few minutes, but I was really nervous. Like he was super like he was all business. He's like, yeah, my wife and I, we have to, mail out these paintings she's doing. And I'm just like, I'm on the phone with, I get starstruck easily, and I'm just like, this is the guy who was playing guitar at my very first rock concert because I saw Kiss during the Hot in the Shade tour. And I'm
Sweet.
like, and now how is he on the phone with me? This is the weirdest thing ever. I don't know if you ever get that feeling anymore
Right.
from anybody.
I think if you have reverence for, even if you start liking somebody now at whatever age you're at, teen now, it's like it just means you have reverence for how they made you want to be a better artist, you know?
Mm-hmm. For
It's
sure.
deep.
Have
That's
you
cool.
have you ever
I'm
met
glad you had
someone
that
and felt that
experience.
way?
You know, what was, yes. Yeah, nobody believes me because there's no fripping cell phones, but yes, I was a tech. It wasn't a personal experience like you got to experience, but um, the last mid 90s, I was a tech in Los Angeles, and I got hired because my boss was named Bear Lemons. Bear, and he looked like a bear. So my three bosses were Bob, Bear, and Bear.
Whoa.
Bear was a retired road manager for Zeppelin. Bob was Chicago's house engineer, and the other Bob was the Eagles road manager for, and they
Holy.
all did the decade thing. So they were old school, and they retired, and now their kids are teenagers at the time, and I don't know how, I thought they were 60 years old, but they were probably only 40, or
Yeah.
45 or whatever, or 50. I don't know what they were. Um, but because of their connections, they started a company called Third Encore, which was named after the Eagles' after party was called Third Encore.
Okay.
So the Eagles will do their cocaine party and called it Third Encore. So they called their company Third Encore. But through their old connections, Coverdale Page got to come in, and I worked their Japanese prep tour.
Whoa.
So hanging out with Jimmy Page, I don't care if you were like, you know, did there was a aura of like, this is it. You're hanging out with the king,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to be your best behavior. And there's security. And we don't want you doing this, and we don't want you doing that. Before, like when you're a tech, you're part of the family for 3 weeks or 2 weeks if you're doing whatever, it's or a prep or Jay Leno or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, it was like, no, this is Jimmy Page, man.
It's like the
So
president.
it's the president. It was the president, and there. It's not like I was hanging out, being around him, and hello, that kind of deal. And I just remember going, "Wow, this is so heavy. This is so heavy."
I can't
But I
believe
found the
that.
Rolling Stone magazine from 2014 that describes the tour and it mentions Third Encore. So I saved that. So when
Really?
everybody's like, you're BSing me, Mike, I'm like, look, I was there.
Maybe you're lucky there wasn't iPhones back then because you probably would have been trying to sneak a shot in and they got fired or something.
It was really serious. So um, tell me if these stories are just, if
No, I
we
love
need to move
these.
forward.
No.
Okay. So in the sound stage, so this is, I swear to God, this is true. Okay. I swear this is true. It's one of the greatest guitar things for my little life over here in Minnesota. So my immediate boss, his name was Jason, and we were like the morning afternoon crew for these different tour preps. So bands would come in and set up their lighting rig, kind of like 440 and Hope now,
Yep.
where Neil Young will come in, park the buses, and they'll practice the show or whatever, right?
True story. Yep.
So yeah, so we were next to the Burbank Airport at this one sound stage. So, and my three bosses, Bear, Bob, and Bob, had a collaboration with another business called Rocket Cargo, which they own 707. So, hey, you need a tour? We'll haul your gear over to Japan or Europe or whatever. So we're next to the airport, and Bear told Jason and I, hey, gear's coming in for Coverdale Page. Can you handle it in the morning? Sure, sure. They're like, don't touch it. Roll the cases in. They're coming in at 3. don't even do anything. Just watch it. So we literally were two guys in this huge sound stage, and we were hired from 9 to 3 just to watch the gear.
Wow.
So Jason's my superior. He was the monitor engineer, and I was the assistant monitor. I was his assistant, so I would do various things. But so the road case comes in, and Jason's like, he's smoking because you could smoke indoors back then. He's like, that's the guitar cases. I'm like, yep. He goes, well, I'm gonna open them.
Oh no.
And I'm like, dude, really? And he's like, yep, because I'm the manager. So we open up the road case, dude. It's like, and we pull out, and the first guitar we pull out is the double neck. And we both played Stairway to Heaven on Jimmy Page's double neck.
No way.
Swear to God. We both played Stairway to Heaven. And then we pulled out Les Paul. I think I played Black Dog or something like that. And then the Dan Electro and then a Martin acoustic were all in the big road case.
Damn.
And we played all of his guitars.
Allegedly.
And,
allegedly. So you don't
allegedly. Yeah, it never happened, man. This is just like good fodder.
We're just
for
riffing here.
Guitar.
Yep.
Yeah, we're just riffing.
Damn.
So, man.
So
that's my infamous story.
How many people can say they played Stairway to Heaven on the actual guitar?
We didn't like sit there for an hour and play the guitars. I mean, this was only like we took about 10 minutes a piece.
Sure.
And then we just put them back in and just kind of did our job. But he was cool, man. He's very aware of the power, but he doesn't take advantage of it. That's what I remember. Again, it's a long time ago. I don't have specific memories other than playing Stairway to Heaven on his guitar.
I wonder if some of that Page energy kind of rubbed off on your fingers, because I don't know. You never know.
Man. He was cool. It was cool. It was a great experience. I forget. I didn't hang out with Coverdale or to talk to him or anything. He was always going to the bathroom, so I always thought he was doing blood or something like that. But yeah. I don't know. I don't want to say that.
Probably.
It was cool. So that would be my ultimate guitar story.
Yeah,
guitar players we are.
You can't get much bigger than that. I mean, that's insane. I was going to give you like a Prince story, but now I just kind of feel like it's going to be dwarfed by that story. But
no, please do.
I was going to actually thank you for reminding me about Coverdale Page, because I remember when they had a hit on MTV and I loved it. And this was, I think, was that before Page and Plant got back together for like...
It was right. It was 95, so 97 would be the No Quarter tour, right?
Okay, yeah.
Rob and Jimmy.
Yeah, because I actually went and saw them with my stepdad, and I was like, I can't believe I'm seeing the real deal in front of me, And now to hear that you were actually like the tech for that and was able to like be backstage and all that stuff, I think I would have fainted. I don't know if I can handle it. Like, were you shaking? Were you nervous?
I wasn't in a lot because, again, being an assistant of it's like the chain of command, definitely a grunt. Move those cases there. Can you take his Janelec to the repair shop down the hall, because there's an in-house dude.
Yeah.
And just various. Oh, here's a funny story. So across the other sound stage was John Sykes.
Really?
And I had to go over to John Sykes because what's the Carmen Apsley
Blue Murder?
Tony Franklin Blue Murder.
Blue Murder, yeah.
So it was Blue Murder. So Blue Murder was rehearsing. I remember on the board it just said John Sykes, because I thought I was going to see like Tony Franklin, and I thought that would be funny, the firm, but I don't think it was Blue Murder, but it was John Sykes for sure. And he was in the smaller room. I swear to God, Mike, I had to go over as a 20-something, steal good mics, the Sennheisers, off of the different instruments, and John Sykes only got 57s and 58s.
Really?
And I had to bring the nice mics, and he caught wind of it. And at the time, he was not speaking David Coverdale. They were arch enemies at the time. And that was like a spinal tap. I was sitting there going, here's Whitesnake. no longer Whitesnake, and they hate each other. And they're in the big room, and that's Jimmy Page, and John Sykes is like, "Where are my good microphones?" And it was very challenging at the time because he was irate.
Yeah.
But looking back, that is a hysterical, like Spinal Tap.
So
like you're just rehearsing. Who gives a shit if you have 50 seconds or 50? Like
so if he would have caught you doing it red-handed, do you think something would have went down? I mean, you can't blame the messenger, right?
he did. He did go to bear my superior and
Okay.
just lay into him. I think their tour manager, Sykes' tour manager, told him,
Okay.
and he wasn't in the room at the time, just the other band members and his tour manager or whatever. But I remember after taking like all the fancy shit, and putting 57s back on the, you know,
Hey, 57s are fine, and I guess, but it becomes this like,
totally.
yeah, it becomes this like back and forth. It's funny because people sometimes rarely grow up. They'll have like a rivalry for life, and I just don't know what happened between those guys. After Whitesnake and all that, was there a bad firing? I don't really know the story.
I don't know the story either. I know they wrote great rock songs, but
Yeah.
I know at the time sensing, it's kind of like Dave Mustaine and Metallica. You know what I mean? It's kind of like watching, not now, but for a period, Dave watched his band grow and prosper, and
Yeah.
just leaps and bounds. Even though made that's huge and
Oh yeah.
iconic and all that stuff, But
Isn't it?
grass is always greener or whatever.
That's kind of
But
ironic. Like, I don't know if it's actually ironic, but it'd be tough to be in a band like Megadeth. As far as you're as big as like very few metal bands get as big as Megadeth, except for the
yeah,
band that kicked you out. It's just like, how did that happen? And it's almost like
it,
anything
oh
Metallica
yeah,
touched turned to gold.
literally. And I felt that way for Sykes, but I felt good after that because I'm like, you know what? Thank God he co-wrote some of those big songs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just that he had some ownership of
Sure.
the early Whitesnake stuff, that he's getting some income for his family, and um, that could carry him for decades. So that's what I remember thinking about. I'm like, you know, but yeah, it was that would kind of suck.
I have to do a video on him because a lot of people they hear Whitesnake, but it seems like a lot of my subscribers say John Sykes, and a lot of people, I don't know if they know how great he is, but it's one of those things where I'd like to bring some attention. Maybe I'll do like his top 3 solos or something. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I remember
Yeah.
trying to learn some of his solos, and I'm like, they're so smooth and musical, and they fit the mood so
Mm,
perfectly. And then he was telling a story about how David Coverdale was kind of like nervous to record with him for some reason. So I think there was like something between them a long time ago that I don't know of yet, but I'm going to
got
have to
it.
do some research
Yeah.
on that. But that's so crazy that you're
Yeah.
caught in between those two worlds, stuck in the middle.
Literally, man. And that really made up for it because most of my work out there, I was in band out there, and I was doing a little session work at a studio called Mighty Might Studios, and still living my rock and roll dream out there.
Yeah.
And met, a few Minnesotans and came back with them. That's how I ended up in Minnesota. But most of the experiences were all cheesy, super pop at the time. I won't go into, but it was very rewarding just to be around some rock and roll once in a while. It wasn't that frequent. It was, do you want a roadie for Sheena Easton? So it's like, so having any rock and roll was a really, that's why I remember those the most, because they were infrequent.
Well, did you have any plans to, the old story, like the roadie had to fill in because the guitar player not overdosed, but slept in, let's say, maybe getting the dream gig that way?
No, no, but I was very tempted. I was an employee, but Lenny Kravitz held bass auditions, public bass auditions,
Wow.
and I loved Lenny Kravitz at the time, I know he plays most of the instruments on the record, so it's like, and he had literally like every day, he did it for 3 days. It was a publicity stunt ultimately. That was the only time I was like screw all this, man. I know I could funk out and
Hmm.
grab my PJs and wear ripped jeans. And I had
Bell
long hair at
bottoms.
the time. It was perfect, man.
Yeah.
But I just had to watch the auditions for 3 days, and and it was exhausting because it was
I
Are You
bet.
Gonna Go My Way? And they played that one. Every bass player had to know that one and one other tune. So,
Was it
but I was like, I'm doing this, man.
do you know that song?
Woo!
Was it that one?
Dude. And by the way, your guitar sounds like his tone.
Oh man. Yeah, I had to pick this
Yeah.
up because of a lady named Samantha
My
Fish.
mama said.
Yeah, I just love that riff. I had a student want me to teach it to him, and I couldn't think of the name of the song. I kept thinking it was called "My Mama Said," but it's called "Always on the Run." I guess it's one of those.
Always on the
Yeah,
run.
it's one
Yeah,
of
yeah,
those
yeah,
cherry
yeah.
bomb things. It's like like Mellencamp. Like, what's the name of that song? Cherry Bomb. Okay,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that riff, I always kind of right when I heard that, I knew I was gonna like Lenny back in the day, and then of course he just exploded with it. So you had to hear "Are You Gonna Go My Way" like 2,000 times.
For 3 days. There's
Jesus.
probably 50 bass players a day because it was in and out.
Yeah.
Next, like it was the classic comedy SNL skit. They wouldn't play the whole song.
Okay.
It'd just be like, part of both songs. I don't remember the second song.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always forget about just speaking of Lenny, it's like just great riffs, man.
Right.
Great riffs.
Well, his influences are so solid. And when you hear him, you're like, I'm already connected to you just because I know you have great influences. And so I've always felt like when he went really electronic that one year, I don't know what year that was, but I was kind of bummed out. But it seemed like a lot of bands were doing that. I think it was late '90s. He put out a ballad and it was like electric drums and stuff. And I'm just like, what's he doing? He's always so
Yeah.
funky. But I think he went back to his original sound eventually. But I haven't heard much from him
Right.
recently. Do you know if he's still doing it up?
No, I know he's in Argentina
Really?
or Brazil. He's got a farm. He bought a farm. It's either in the wilderness in Brazil or Argentina. I think it's Argentina.
Okay.
That's where he lives. His studio's there. That's all I know is that's where he lives and prospers on his. I think it's a working. I forget what product he's producing there, but he's got horses, and I just remember reading about it.
I love
No,
the idea of life after rock stardom. It's like some people make their own tequila, some people grow their own coffee,
right?
some people have their own vineyards now, like the guy from Tool. And just like,
Cool, yeah.
yeah, what do you do after you're done rocking and can you go back after all that stuff?
Do you know what I read literally yesterday?
Hmm.
Like the dudes in Green have a coffee company. Like you mentioned coffee, and
Yeah,
I like
that
what?
that makes sense. Yeah, I just can't picture them all wearing like well, maybe ties, but business outfits and
Right,
like talking to somebody. But
right,
it's good to know that because if they already have the fame, they can already have a boost in their product. And I mean, if their product sucks, it's still not it's not going to be huge. But like Metallica has their own vodka now too, and I'm just like I'm kind of tempted just to try it at least once. It's called Blackened, I guess, so it's perfect.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, I mean, when can we expect your tequila to come out? Like Sammy
Oh,
Hagar.
probably. Who I follow religiously on Instagram.
Oh yeah, he's always doing it up.
Man, that dude can still sing, man.
He can. Have you heard David Coverdale's voice recently?
I have not.
Okay,
I have not.
it's kind of sad. But speaking of just singers whose voices just kind of, it's like they gave their voice for rock and roll, like Tom Kiefer from Cinderella, and but when I heard
Yeah,
Sammy Hagar, I'm like, he still has it. I don't know what he's drinking, maybe tequila, but it's working
yeah.
for him.
He's still got the power, and I love his guitar player Vic.
Hmm.
And being able to see Michael Anthony. Another. Can we please talk about Michael Anthony's live? Watching him live, how melodic he is.
Right.
He's so in and out of the chord changes, man.
Hmm.
I think he's definitely one of my favorite rock bass players, and his vocals are great, of course, and the sound of Van Halen the vocal part. But
Hmm.
watching him as a bass player, like as we're in COVID times, we all have a little bit more time. So, but watching all that rare footage people have been putting up lately. And
Yeah.
he's just a stellar bass player, especially on like Fair Warning. And
Oh
I don't know,
man.
I really like him.
That should be a video if one of us has to do it, just the most underappreciated bass players. Because when I was a kid,
Oh man.
my babysitter's brother was playing a Van Halen VHS tape, and it was so crazy because I never really saw them live before. And this is actually Sammy Hagar era, but it was very early on. And I remember
Yeah.
Michael Anthony doing a bass solo and drinking a whole bottle of Jack Daniels. I'm like, holy shit. But he I could hear his bass really well in the mix, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
so without him, think of how much you're missing in a band that's that, concise. You have the backup vocals alone. I mean, that's got to be one of the highest ways of having to sing
Oh,
backup in a band. I just would never want
right.
that gig, but I mean, I would, but it's like, how do you keep that up for that many shows and drinking like that? I mean, that guy just gave it all, man.
He did. And watching him with Sammy lately, it's like he can still pipe.
Really?
And I've been sneaking up on YouTube of John Five inviting Mike up to play some Van Halen songs at small clubs in
Really?
LA pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And man, they are ripping some old school Van Halen. Michael Anthony.
John Five, huh?
Yeah, and John Five's doing like because he's such a unique metal goth country guy.
Yeah, he's
Katie
everything.
Lang, and
Yep.
it's like what?
Katie Lang and Marilyn Manson. It's like, what? How does that work?
What? And so he's got this telly chicken picking thing going on. But when he was doing the Van Halen stuff, I mean, tone, sound, like you can tell he took that extreme. Like he wasn't kind of winging anything. It was like, no, that dude took Michael Anthony's presence pretty damn serious and just aced essence of Edward for that experience. So, yeah, John Five's doing some killer VH cover stuff.
Man.
I don't know what year it was. It's in it's last couple of years for sure.
Well, now I got to look a lot of stuff up. I got to write this down as we're talking. So I got to look up John Five doing Van Halen. I got to look up
Michael Anthony.
With Michael Anthony, Blue Murder, and Coverdale Page, because I remember Blue Murder had a killer song that sounded like Zeppelin. All I Can Do Is Wait For You, I think it was called, or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that's going to bring back a lot of nostalgia because I was at an age where I was just starting guitar, and that song used to always be on MTV. And what other? I'm going to have to look back. I'm going to go back and watch this whole video and take notes, I guess. But we're already at an hour and 12 minutes, man. It felt like 10 minutes to me, so I really appreciate
we're riffing good. We're riffing well.
I'd like to do this someday, just like sitting in a studio, maybe do it face to face, because with this delay, I'm never really able to just kind of settle in like I like to do, but this is the next best thing, so I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Let's do it again, even if it is another virtual session. No problem.
Yeah, I'd love to. And thanks for all your hard work and what you put forth to the music world, the guitar world, the universe with all your talent. So thank you.
Thank you, brother. We'll see you probably on Facebook soon.
Yeah. All right. And we'll see you over there.
All right. Take care.